welcome, welcome, welcome. Hey, Melissa, we've got a lot of our Democracy Center leaders here. Welcome, welcome. So thank you all so much for joining us. Welcome, Sue, and I'll let Jake talk about Sue. I see so many of our phone bank team leaders, our paid phone bank team. Welcome, welcome. Oh, wow, great. Hey, Shelley, a number of people that I know from Virginia. So welcome, welcome. We've got a couple more minutes and then we will get started. We will. I've got a lot of information. There's going to be some interesting news out of Virginia, and we've got a lot of really exciting upcoming events. So there's going to be a lot to hear about tonight. I need to take a breath. All right. And we've still got folks coming in. And we've got one more minute, and then we are going to go ahead and get started. All right. Another phone bank team member popping in. All right. All right. I'm going to go get my presentation and we are going to be ready to go. So we're already recording. So great. Welcome, everybody. So thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, we are going to be talking about the Wisconsin Supreme Court race and having a little celebration. Unless you live under a rock in far western Montana, you probably know that Judge Janet Protasiewicz prevailed in the Wisconsin Supreme Court race on April 4th. So many, many, many thank yous to all the people who worked, to everybody who sent postcards, to everybody who made a phone call, to everybody who sent text messaging. So we're going to be giving you a report on those numbers, and then we are going to get you ready for the battle that is shaping up that will be Virginia in 2023, because the entire Virginia General Assembly, all 140 seats, will be up for election, re-election. And we're going to do some things differently this year that we've never done before. So let's get started. All right, it works this way. All right, now we sent postcards and we sent 148,000 postcards primarily to Milwaukee, Racine, and Madison, to the Black and Hispanic voters, because in the great state of Wisconsin, we have a very large concentration of our BIPOC voters in those three cities. Now, we did some texting, and again, it was primarily the Black voters. And this is just one city, so that's why the numbers weren't higher. We were able to send 45,000 texts into the city of Milwaukee. And Jake will probably talk about turnout, since we do actually have someone here tonight who lives in Wisconsin. Now, we had phone banks for Black voters. We also had phone banks for Hispanic voters later on. And you can see the number of calls we made. Now, the call numbers are higher because we also started making calls during the primary, but really hit our stride during the general, because the same time as the Milwaukee primary, we also were having an actual general election in Virginia. And so as soon as that election was over, our phone bank team switched over to Milwaukee. So all told, between the primary and the general, we made 67,257 calls into the city of Milwaukee. So again, remember, we were concentrating our calls in one city because that's where our BIPOC voters were, predominantly in Wisconsin. All right, Jake, do you want to take us through this and then talk about the turnout in Wisconsin, which was fantastic?
All right, thanks, Andrea. Well, folks, if you were on Slack the last week of the election, you might have seen some posts regarding a little contest that we tried running, just as a game, just as an experiment, just to try to do something fun, to see if folks would respond. And we said, who can make the most phone calls for democracy into Milwaukee in the last week of the election, and you responded. If you were on Slack, then there were lots of folks that participated in our little contest. So this is the final 10. But all in all, we had, I want to say, about 56 people that participated, and we made over 6,400. Well, we made exactly 6,467 phone calls in that last week, and that was more than half of the entire total of phone calls that were made in the general election phone bank. So we did 3 times as many phone calls that last week as we did the week before, and more than half of the total was in that last week. So I just want to thank everyone for coming out. We've got a few prizes that we're gonna recognize our phone bank leaders with, and then Susan C., Stephen S., and Patricia G. I wish we had like the little Olympics tiered boxes that we could really do a fun thing. But thank you all for coming out. Thank you for making so many phone calls. Thank you for driving so much turnout. We set a new record for turnout in a spring election in Wisconsin. So I'll say that. Anything else to add, Andrea?
No, other than it was incredible watching the numbers come in on election night, and the numbers were so good that they called the election for Judge Janet a little more than an hour after the polls closed. So you're looking at a blowout election when after an hour they're like, she's got it, all we're going to do is just watch the numbers continue to run up. Now, Madison turned in what? Something like 75% of the vote in Madison was for Judge Janet. I know 73% of the vote in Milwaukee was for Judge Janet.
Yeah, so the Dane County total was 82-18. And I want to say the Madison was like, 91-9 or something like that.
All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a serious blowout.
I do want to point out one thing though, and that is that Dane County, again, the first time this happened was in the primary, and the second time it happened was in the general. Dane County put in more votes than Milwaukee County did. And so I feel like that is something that our group was involved in trying to help Milwaukee really put more numbers on the board. And Dane County beat us by 7,000 votes. And so that is a growth edge that future election efforts can work on, is really helping Milwaukee turn out its vote on those spring special elections.
All right. Well, let's hope we don't have too many more spring special elections.
We've got at least 2 years.
Having to vote in April.
Dane County is the home of Madison, and Milwaukee County is the home of Milwaukee. Those are the two biggest cities in Wisconsin. Madison is notoriously progressive. It is described by its former mayor as 80 square miles surrounded by reality. And Milwaukee is the by far largest city in Madison or in Wisconsin. Milwaukee County, I think, is about 3 or 4 times the size of Dane County. And so ordinarily, Milwaukee County puts much bigger numbers on the board than Dane County does. But Dane County has really been working on turnout, and there's more work to be done in Milwaukee. So I'm glad it was close. Milwaukee was within 7,000 votes of beating Dane County, but that's a growth edge for us. And someone mentioned the college town or the college turnout, and I would be happy to put a link in our Slack channel and our Zoom chat. I read an article the other day about a new organization, a new effort called Project 72 Wisconsin, and that was specifically aimed at innovative tactics on college campuses. So the UW system has the better part of a dozen campuses all over the state, and they really focused on turning out the youth college vote. And so they almost, in most of those places, we almost achieved turnout on par with the November election last year. But what happened was the percentage of voters voting for the progressive candidate was even that much higher. It went from like 70% last November to like 85 or 90% this time, and that really made a big difference.
All right, thank you so very much, Jake, for that. Now, this has been the year of the elections. We worked on the Mableton election earlier in March, and when we looked at it, we ended up having a runoff for mayor and 4 of the 6 city council districts. So our phone bank team has been calling through on Mableton. Mableton is a city in Cobb County. It's a brand new city. In November, they voted to make Mableton an independent city, and Mableton is electing their first mayor and their first city council. And our Democracy Center leader, Dr. Monica Brown, was able to put together a meeting with the Mableton candidates and the phone bank team. So the phone bank team could say, look, these are the kind of questions that voters are asking us about you. These are the kind of comments that they are making, because virtually all of these candidates were newbies and they had never run for office before. So the Mableton election will be next week. And when we finish that, it will be time to deal with the Virginia primaries. So far, the phone bank team, they've made 9,989 calls. There are a total of 13,218. They will probably knock those out by the end of this weekend. All right, so congratulations on Wisconsin. That was a tremendous boost for democracy. And now let's take a look at where I live, the great Commonwealth of Virginia. So when we look at Virginia, as I said, there are 140 seats in the Virginia legislature. We have 40 seats in the Virginia Senate, and we have 100 seats in the Virginia House. Virginia has an election every year, and our state elections are on odd numbered years. So this means in 2023, this is the first time that legislators have been running in Virginia in new districts. Now, we really had nonpartisan redistricting. When they were done, we ended up with 37 districts that were Republican leaning, 31 districts that were Democratic leaning. So when you look at this map and you see the red and the blue, and there were 32 new districts that are totally up for grabs. So if the candidates work, if we work, then hopefully we will be able to make changes in the Virginia State House. So as I said, all 140 districts are going to be up for election. We had more than 25 incumbent senators and delegates, Democrats and Republicans, decide they were not going to run for re-election. Some of them because the district they were now in was less favorable for their party than their old district. A number of them decided not to run because they didn't want to run against a fellow incumbent. So they stepped back so that the other incumbent they were running against would not have a primary. We also had several of our a couple of our senators and some delegates stepped back because they had served in the Virginia General Assembly for more than 40 years. Now, what's at stake in Virginia? Well, just as reproductive rights was at stake in Wisconsin, it is at stake in Virginia. Remember, Virginia is literally the northernmost southern state. I mean, unless we go and count Missouri. But generally, when we look at the old South, we go, yeah, it's in Virginia. Now, Virginia is the battleground for reproductive choice, and we currently have a constitutional amendment for reproductive freedom. Now, even if we pass it, the odds that our governor is not going to sign it are very, very high. But with the right legislature, we could, it would be a really big lift, theoretically override the governor. Now, the only thing that the governor in Virginia controls as it relates to voting is restoration of rights for returning citizens or people who have been formerly convicted of a felony. Now, in Virginia, in 2021, Virginia passed some of the most progressive, far-reaching, strong voting rights laws. Virginia has 45 days of early voting. Virginia has the Voters' Bill of Rights, which is our John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, Virginia style. In that, we mandated that every county had to have drop boxes for every 50,000 voters that were in that county. So they looked very, very hard at what they had done to circumvent voting rights in states like Texas and Georgia, and Virginia legislated around it. So as I said, the only thing that the governor controls regarding voting in Virginia is what is the process and the procedure for restoration of rights. In 2016, Governor Terry McAuliffe made restoration of rights a semi-automatic procedure. When you were released from prison, then you would one by one receive a restoration of rights order from the governor. The next governor, Ralph Northam, continued the exact same procedure. Governor Youngkin has decided he's not doing that. Under the Virginia Constitution, which has not been changed since 1902, the governor is the god of voting as it relates to felony disenfranchisement, and the governor can do anything that they choose. And so right now, Governor Youngkin has decided he's going to go back to the constitutional intent. And we're saying to disenfranchise Black and brown people, because that was the constitutional intent. So we no longer have procedures for what people must do to get their rights restored. We know it is no longer automatic. We also have no idea how long the process will take, and there is nothing that anyone can see. So one of the other things that taking control of our legislature will allow us to do is amend the Virginia Constitution, where we make restoration of voting rights automatic. So upon release from prison, irrespective of fines and fees, we learned that from Florida, people's right to vote would automatically be restored. Now, the primary schedule. Postcard addresses for Virginia races will be available starting on April 21st. Maybe they're going to be available on the 22nd, but it will be right around April 21st. We are going to open the phone banks for at least one, if not two districts, also on April 21st. We will begin texting on May 1st because early voting in Virginia begins on May 5th. Remember, the primary is on June 20th, and we have 45 days of early voting. All right, now, What does Virginia look like? Election day is June 20th, primary election day. And right now, there are 47 Democrats and 51 Republicans in the Virginia State House. That means Virginia is one of the few southern states where, with one decent election, we could tie, if not take back, the Virginia House. Currently, the Virginia Senate, there are 22 Democrats, a couple of them somewhat questionable, and there are 18 Republicans. Virginia has never been a big state on independence. Now, there are 2 vacancies in the Virginia House. There's one Democratic vacancy when Lamont Bagby won the Senate seat, and there is one Republican vacancy. So that is as of this month. When we look at the Senate, because we had 2 very successful special elections, one in January and another one in March, we are still 21-18 in the Virginia Senate. So again, remember, all 140 seats are up at the same time. There are many districts that are going to have primaries, and there are many districts where the incumbent does not have a primary. So what I'm going to do now is sort of begin to switch hats a little bit and talk about the first 2 races where we know we're going to be involved. And I've already provided the addresses for postcards. Now, this first race is a Democratic primary over in the area called Hampton Roads. That's Oceanside, Virginia. We are very excited about this race because our phone bank team members live in Hampton Roads. So these cities, Chesapeake and Portsmouth, are very canvassable cities for the phone bank team. Now, who are the 2 candidates? This is one of those districts where 2 incumbent senators literally ended up in the same district. And you're going, all right, we will be doing GOTV primary. We want to get out the vote. When we look at primary turnout for both these districts, 80% of the eligible voters in these districts do not vote in primaries. Now, on the one hand, we have Senator Louise Lucas, who is in an historic race. She is the first African-American and the first woman to be Senate President pro tem. If she were to win this race, she would also, because of her seniority, become the first African-American and the first woman to chair Senate Finance and Appropriations. So this race for her is just as historic as the race that Jen McClellan ran a couple of months ago. Now, the district is a majority minority district. So you can see from the numbers, 44% Black, it's 2.3% Asian. When we throw in the 6.8% Hispanic, that makes this a majority minority district. Now, the other candidate, be it ego, be it that he terms himself a Republican. He's a Republican who runs as a Democrat. He is really going to play spoiler in this race. This race is going to be a very tricky one because 64% of this district is actually in his backyard. So Senator Lucas is new to the Chesapeake part, while she has served for 30 years on the Portsmouth part. So we've come up with an interesting solution. Now, here's our second Senate race. Some of you may remember these counties because these were the CD4 counties for Jennifer McClellan when she was running. These folks must be suffering from voter exhaustion because we started in December with the firehouse primary, then there was the primary, then there was the race to replace her Senate seat. And so these folks have literally gone through 4 elections already from December until March. And now there is another race. Now, this district, the incumbent is Senator Joe Morrissey, who ran for that seat from jail while he had been imprisoned for statutory rape. Lasheri's Aird was the delegate, and during the adjustment of districts in 2021, she was not successful with her delegate seat, and the Senate seat is actually a much better fit for her. And again, this is the majority minority district. So a very, very interesting district. Now, I currently am founding board member and the executive director of Center for Common Ground, which is a 501c3. And that puts us at a serious disadvantage for being able to go in a little deeper on a primary other than just telling people we need you to show up and vote, when both candidates are going to have these behind their name. In January, I again became president of the National Women's Political Caucus of Virginia. And the NWPCVA is a 501c4 organization, and we endorse women candidates. More than, actually 40 candidates have requested our endorsement. I have to touch it, otherwise it was going to go to sleep. Our endorsement announcements are going to be made on April 21st. We already know that Lasheri's Aird and Senator Louise Lucas are going to be endorsed. So we will have a 501c3 operation, Reclaim Our Vote Center for Common Ground. National Women's Political Caucus will also be running a campaign, and they will be running a more partisan campaign supporting their endorsed candidates. So there are going to be a lot of new events coming up. As I said, we've already had the governor overturn restoration of rights. We now have a 501c4 that will be working in Virginia and working with the Virginia candidates. So on April 30th, which is a Sunday at 6 p.m., we will be hosting a Zoom event called Rally for Virginia, the Road to Richmond. This will be the first event in a series of events where we introduce our volunteers to the candidates that are running for office in Virginia. So right now, we have 6 candidates that we have invited to join us. And our special guest will hopefully be Representative Jennifer McClellan, who will also speak about the importance of Virginia. So this event will not be sponsored by Center for Common Ground, which is why it is not on a Thursday, it is on a Sunday. It will be sponsored by the National Women's Political Caucus of Virginia. It will be me wearing my 501c4 hat. Next event. Oh, all right. Seats lost in 2021. Many of these races were very, very close. And here are the candidates that will be running again. So Josh Cole is running again. Alex Askew is running again. They're all in slightly new numbered districts, slightly reconfigured districts, and LaSharice is running for Senate. And then I've already gone through some of the primaries. 18 and 13 are definites for us. Some of the others will probably go to the C4 side because of the racial makeup of the districts. It's not a majority minority district. Many of them have very, very small numbers of voters of color because some of these districts are rural. Now, Center for Common Ground event on May 11th. Many of you remember Mandela Barnes, who was a candidate for U.S. Senate from Wisconsin. Mandela Barnes has not left politics. He has created a PAC called the Long Run. And the purpose of his PAC is called Building a Representative Democracy. In other words, it's to support candidates of color, LGBTQIA candidates, and candidates running in rural districts that don't normally get the attention they deserve from the establishment. So Mandela Barnes will be joining us on May 11th. And then finally, on May 18th, we will have a panel of people from Virginia talking about what we are going to be doing to restore the right to vote in Virginia, since Governor Youngkin has decided to take us back to 1902. So that panel will be May 18th. We are inviting Senator Mamie Locke, who is the author of the constitutional amendment for restoration of voting rights. We are inviting Delegate Don Scott, who himself is a member of the Virginia General Assembly, and he is a returning citizen. We will also be inviting Frank Anderson, who was formerly the executive director of the Fairfax County Democratic Committee and Frank was a returning citizen. So we will be looking at the activist approach, the legislative approach, and the electoral approach that we will need to take to get Virginia literally from a constitution that leaves us in 1902 to where we want to be in the 21st century. So this will be in everybody's notes, and I invite you to join us. So what I'm going to do is stop sharing my screen, and I will take questions. Whoa, the chat has been busy. All right, Josie, team, are there questions here?
Oh gosh, I know there was one a way back asking for Wisconsin, asking about the number of Black voters that were in Milwaukee. If you know that.
I don't remember what that was, that were just in Milwaukee itself. The number 98,000 is coming to mind. And we had Jake.
We had 85,000 addresses.
Okay.
And so that was our search for active registered voters.
Yep.
So I'm not sure who that's leaving out, but that's how many we had total.
Right. All right. Thank you, Jake. Do we have other questions?
There's one just put in the chat from Leslie about the verbiage for the postcards for the primary.
On the C3 side, we basically are reminding voters, and as I said, 80% of the eligible voters in both those districts do not vote in primaries. And I think it's something like 60% of them are 0 for 3. The language basically says that, okay, and Carrie said she answered that in the chat. The language basically gives the names of the two candidates, and it's reminding voters that in a primary, you are choosing who is going to be on the ballot in November. We name the two candidates and we tell them, choose your champion for women's health care, education, and voting rights. Yes. Yes. And then I see the other note, as a C3, we can't encourage people to vote for candidate A or candidate B. All we can do is mention them by name and say, we have this candidate, we have that candidate, and that's all we can say. As an endorsing C4, we have the ability to say, we have endorsed so-and-so.
I just got a private message for questions, a good question, which is, will folks who are on our Center for Common Ground list automatically get information on postcards and other volunteer efforts with the National Women's Political Caucus, or do they need to sign up separately somehow to be on that list and get updates?
What we are going to do is they will be invited to attend our first event on April 30th. So if people want to get that information, sign up for that event, at which point that will then authorize us to continue to give you information about our more partisan side. Yes. All right. I think we did really, really, really good on time. I was a little bit worried about that because I had a lot of information to give very, very quickly. So wonderful, wonderful. Yes. All right. And I want to send another big thank you and shout out. Our paid phone bank team is in the room. So our leader, Janice Gay, is here, and I have seen so many of the young phone bankers come in. And again, because these folks are on the much younger side than some of us, many of them will be doing door knock canvassing because our weather is turning beautiful. All right.
Andrea, we have,
Andrea?
there we go. Go ahead, Ruth. I was about to say you have your hand raised.
Oh, okay, thank you. I wanted to ask you, I got a email about Pennsylvania having an election, and I believe it's their representatives, and quite honestly, it's not, I got it from I got it from a partisan place turned PA Blue, but they did actually send me a notice of an election there, and apparently it's very close. And I'm wondering if that's anything. I did email you, but you probably get a million emails. Is that anything that Center for Common Ground
No.
would want to get involved in?
No, we've got 140 seats to deal with in Virginia. Virginia will be the only elections that we work on between now and November. We'll be finishing up Mableton, Georgia on the 18th. One of the problems is we don't have the Pennsylvania voter file. State voter files are $30,000 each.
Whoa.
So, yes. So
Okay, thank you. That answers that.
We do have the Virginia voter file, which we renew the subscription every year, and the Georgia voter file, which we renew every year. We
Perfect.
also don't have partners in Pennsylvania the way we do in Virginia and Georgia.
Perfect. Thank you for your explanation.
Oh, you are very, very welcome, Ruth. That was an excellent question. Are we good? Am I done? Oh, I'm excited. People are like, oh my goodness, 140 races. So I know all of our faith partners, we will continue finding more races where we will be able to work on our C3 side. For some of you who have a more partisan interest, we heard you and we realized on some of our races, we're going to need to go a little bit deeper than just asking people to vote. All right. Everybody that signed up for this will get the recording, and they will also get the meeting notes. So I am going to thank all of you for joining us, and I'm excited. We're going to get out a few minutes early. So go and rest up, because we will be getting started with Virginia literally next week. So take care, everybody, and thank you so very much for coming. Good night.
Good night.